You are listening to the Sinister DreamCast Network.
So, what's the plan?
I'm gonna start shaking things up.
I got a bad feeling about this.
Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn.
Don't say that. What? That? What? That?
I'm gonna make him an offer he can't refuse.
Tell him about the Twinkie.
What about the Twinkie?
Well, gentlemen, you had my curiosity. Now you have my attention.
Hello, and welcome to the Insert Movie Reference Here podcast. I am one of your hosts, Nick Kazina.
And I am also one of your hosts, Joe Conniff.
You forgot your name for a second, didn't you, Joe?
No, I would never. I've only done that several times. It's not as common this week. I've been very good at it.
So, this week will be a little bit more, a little more upbeat than last week's, understandably. But we got a lot of news for you, and we got some follow-ups as well. Do you want to start up with the first follow-up to the news, Joe, with Deadpool?
Ryan Reynolds pretty much came. I didn't get to read it, Nick. You read it, but he pretty much affirmed all of the things we speculated about the Tim Miller split from Deadpool, which was, which were vaguely written off as creative differences in the beginning, and then we kind of went in deeper about kind of how, this is Ryan Reynolds' ship, and if it's going down, he's going to drive it. He's going to be the one who drives it into the ground.
Yeah.
It's going to be based on his decisions, and he's going to take responsibility for it, and he refuses for it to stray away from what he intends it to be, and then to also go down.
Yeah, hold on. I'm bringing it up right now, actually, because they had it as a quote. Okay, this is the direct quote from what he said. Making movies very difficult. Making the movie was very, very difficult. It was the most passionate group of individuals I've ever worked with in my life, and for whatever reason, the mercular, crazy bugger, I don't know, whatever, of people is what made this thing so well. Not just because of the vision. Okay, I guess this is not exactly what he was talking about. Oh, sorry, here it is. Okay, here's the actual quote. This is what happens whenever you're trying to skim things so people don't have to listen to silence. But here's the quote is, I know when I need to exert control, and I know when to let go of it. I'm not going to sit and tell Tim Miller and say, the visual effects of Deadpool need to be done this way. The man is a visual effects wizard. But there are character and tone things that I know really well, and I've also been with this thing the longest out of anybody, aside from the guys that wrote the comics. 11 years. I've been trying to get this Sisyphusian rock up the hill, and it kept rolling back on top of me. So I'm gonna be all the fuck over it from the moment it starts, from the moment it finishes.
Okay, so I mean, he decided to use Sisyphus as an analogy, but that's what I was saying.
Yeah. Yeah, so it's pretty much, at the end of the day, Ryan Reynolds is the producer. He joined the Producers Guild so he could have the control over this, and it sounds like he's also a good producer because he's able to end a creative relationship with someone on good terms. So,
well, I think it's also just the not having the tunnel vision that, hey, we made this great movie last time with Tim Miller, we'll make it again, and not thinking that you're going to get the same results, essentially, by doing the same thing. It's not necessarily true in movies. Like, how many times have they brought back a director for the sequel of something, and it's the shittier version of it,
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not... You and I aren't surprised by these things. But it's nice, and we're bringing it up mostly to gloat about the fact that...
Yeah, we were right.
Pretty much what we said. Not that it takes a genius mind to come to that conclusion, but it took two genius minds, actually.
Yes. Exactly.
So you should trust all of our speculation, essentially, in all of these podcasts, going
from
forward
here on
and the past.
So pretty much, you can put the analogy: Word of God, insert movie reference here, podcast.
Yeah,
that's what we're saying.
It's pretty much it. Yeah.
Yeah. Also, in news, this dropped today, the day that we're recording this, November 15th. I had to look at my phone, because I don't know the date. Though I wrote it 5 times today, I didn't remember the date. Carrie Fisher, just confirmed what I feel like Star Wars fans has speculated for a very long time.
You know what? Her coming out and saying this, when you told me this, in my head I went, oh, that's just... There's just so many, like... that's pure, like, PR working there. You know what I mean? Obviously, there's probably truth in this, but she knows exactly what this is going to do. Because this is, like you said, this confirms a speculation amongst fanboys for a very long time anyhow, and kind of probably makes some really twisted dreams come true as well.
I think she revealed this specific to it because it's in, she has a new book coming out, Princess Diarist, which is her diaries throughout the years. Mm-hmm. So I think she dropped this tidbit just to get it out of the way, which is in 2000. In 1976, her and Harrison Ford had an affair on the set of A New Hope. The first time they slept together actually was after the birthday party for George Lucas. So
it's not like if you know actors and you understand their entire incestuous sort of behavior anyhow, none of that's shocking to anybody. No. Really, that's on the outside looking in. Like, I assume a lot of co-stars end up shacking up just because they're all very emotionally, physically driven individuals just by nature, and then you put them together and force them to then obviously create chemistry together anyhow as love interests. Something is probably going to spark.
Yeah. So she said it only lasted 3 months and it was a good time. She's not trying to put it up as anything. That's the one thing that I like about Carrie Fisher talking about it. It was one of those things that it was.
But this will.
It was good at the time. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, she's smart. She was also smart enough to give Harrison Ford a heads up too.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Yeah. So, but yeah,
I mean, at this point in his career, he's in a big I don't give a fucking shit. He's doing the tour of I could give a fuck, and he's been doing it since before Force Awakens came out. So he probably just went okay,
Yeah. Whatever, Carrie. Fine.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's just funny that it's just something to bring up because it was one of those things that we were all just like, yeah, we all kind of knew. And also, were you gonna say something, Joe?
No.
Okay.
No, I think it should end there, actually.
That's fine.
Yeah.
The other thing, Beauty and the Beast trailer dropped this past week. So this one we'll get a little bit more analytical in. So, what were your thoughts on the Beauty and the Beast trailer, Joe?
Well, I literally just watched it.
Yes. It's fresh in Joe's mind, which is the best thing for podcasting.
All of 11 minutes ago, I watched it. So it didn't really sink in. I kind of just watched the imagery and everything. So really what sticks out in my brain is the imagery, which I'm quite impressed with. Obviously, visual effects-wise, Disney is not going to take a step back with these kind of movies. I actually think everything looks very nice. Something that I'm actually impressed with that they're doing with these movies is they're not trying to make any of these live-action Disney movies of like this. I guess it's sort of just like a new era of Disney films. Live-action version of the Disney movies we grew up with are essentially coming out. And something that they've really not strayed away from and that they've really embraced is the fact that they don't feel the need, because it's live-action, to make it realistic in any way.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that about it. Like, we're in an era where we want to ground things. They want everything to be grounded in reality, even things that are fantastical, like superheroes. We crave for things to be grounded, and I know that almost sounds silly. It's like, obviously they wouldn't worry about making things grounded in a children's movie, but that's actually very much the case. Pixar movies are very grounded. You know? They're animated, so they're able to mask it with illusion a little bit better. But a live action movie, if you start to ground it, it becomes very obvious. very fast. In these movies, they have not really done that at all with so far, and it looks like with this particular movie, they're especially not doing it. I was really impressed at how they balanced color from what I could look at in this trailer.
Yeah.
It is a movie that could be easily very dark and disturbing, kind of. And they've kept it dark and in the and used shadows very well, but still used color very well.
Yeah, Beauty and the Beast, like the original story, is very dark. Mm-hmm. A lot of people don't know this, but the original Beauty and the Beast was actually one of the movies that Walt Disney was trying to get made. He tried for 10 years to try to make this, but the original fairy tale is a very boring fairy tale. It's pretty much like, Belle, or I don't even know if her name is Belle in the original story, but she's, the captive of the beast, and it's just them having dinner together repeatedly, and him asking her to marry him, and her saying no repeatedly. Like, that sums up the original fairy tale. So, like, Disney struggled for a very long time to get this made. And it's also, like, again, it is a little dark. So, like, the fact that they were taking, they're taking it and making it, like, almost like an homage to the original 1993 movie. It was very 1991, I think.
I don't
around
know.
there. No, 91. It has to be because it came out before Aladdin. The original 91 movie is refreshing. It's nice to see. And it's like there's like you were saying, like it's not necessarily grounded, but at the same time it's believable. Like they redesigned Cogsworth and Lumiere, so they make a little bit more sense, like anatomically. But like that's it. Like it's not. They don't really go beyond that.
Yeah, and it looks like it's gonna be very. It looks like you're actually more so seeing like a live action. It looks like it's adapted from a play almost. The way it's very histrionic in its style, not so much its acting, but its style. It looks very much, which is kind of what you expect from Beauty and the Beast. It has that very, the original movie had this very vibrantness to it, but like just sparks of vibrant color. And then, the way it looked was very theatrical just in the way it was sort of presented to us as even just an animated version. So, which made the animation remarkable from a perspective standpoint. The things that they did in that movie were pretty revolutionary. So, to then...
That opening shot.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. A lot of people don't look at that, especially nowadays, because it's just taken for granted. All of that shit was hand-drawn.
Yeah.
Or painted, at least, or to some degree. So, like, all of it was, like, none of that was computer-generated, so to speak. They just didn't really have that ability. So, to now turn around and use the technology now in sort of to its fullest advantage, I guess, is something that is the least they can do. Which it seems like they've done. I don't know. It's always hard to tell in trailers. Sometimes it's easy to see right through visual effects, but sometimes it's tough. Sometimes they mask it very well.
Yeah. My only critique of the trailer is they open it up with the original theme, that do 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 do, which is great. It gets you in the mood for the movie and everything, and it hits the nostalgia button pretty well. Thing I don't like is the end of the trailer. They use like stock epic music, which really takes away from like all of the great points that we brought up about this trailer and how like wonderful it is and how it seems to have its own voice and its own tone. And it's like, I understand that they probably redid all of the music. They might reuse a couple themes in it. So like that kind of thing. But like for the trailer, you can reuse all of the music from the original animated movie. That's fine. No one's going to say that you're slacking. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I'm sure they'll do their best to just do all of the original music, recomposed, obviously, but, they'll probably still do all the original music. They haven't been afraid at all to use music in these movies, which is another thing. It's just like, no, just because it's live action, we're not going to stray away from making them have musical elements to them, and they haven't, and they won't do it whenever they do Lion King either. If there's one thing about this that shuts a lot of people up, or the people bashing the fact that they were remaking Lion King.
Mm-hmm.
And when you see this and you just see it, and you know what they did with Jungle Book already with the live action animals, you already know how good that looked. And then you can see this, you can see how well they've nailed down the tone and how respectful they are of, you know, people that are fans of this property. How can you not at this point go, I'm kind of excited for Lion King?
Yeah.
I mean, it looks very beautiful at the very least. I think that it just looks like it's taken care of.
Yeah. And also the cast, because I didn't know the full cast. I really just knew Emma Watson was Belle, which I was like, right on. But I was looking at the full cast, and they did a really great job, like, casting the rest of this. Like, Luke Evans as Gaston, Ewan McGregor as Lumiere, Ian Holm as Cogsworth, Kevin Kline as Maurice, which I was like, right on. That was a real good casting that they didn't really talk about. Josh Gad as LeFou. Like, can you really think of anyone better than Josh Gad as LeFou?
It kind of just falls right down into place. Like, you get the imagery, and then you're, oh yeah, that makes sense. Like, that's great casting. Whenever, you know, they did a ton of work to get to that point. But when it's said out loud, it becomes very obvious.
Yeah. Oh, and Emma Thompson as Mrs. Potts.
Yeah.
And the Beast looks good. It looks like they did as much practical as they could with his
they possibly
design.
could. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was probably always going to be the most challenging thing in the movie, and probably won't be perfect throughout the entire movie. But from what I can see, it looks like it's passable. You know.
Yeah.
Which is the best you can say about any time you have a character like that on screen that is pretty much a main character. Like, visual effects wise, you have your work cut out for you, you know, because anytime you have to use it, you have to use it full time.
Yeah. So I mean, I'm excited. I think it will be a fun thing. It'll be something enjoyable. The next bit of news that we got is something that borders on experimental filmmaking in a way. Is that they recently announced that they're going to be remaking American Werewolf in London, which I know a lot of people are like, oh, fuck, that's a classic movie.
Yeah. It's like, that movie kicks off some very, very powerful 80s imagery.
Yeah.
And very early on in the 80s, it has I see that movie and I go, this movie has a lot to do with transitioning from the 70s to the 80s in terms of cinema.
Yeah.
You know, like, here you have a movie that normally, if it were made in the 70s, would be a lot darker and a lot more, like, grotesque and things like that. But instead, you have this movie that's kind of fun.
Yeah.
And it just kind of, like we've said about the 80s a million times, 80s were just about fun in the movies. And yeah, color and fun, and that was the 80s, and the 70s was everything anti that. So this movie has a lot to do with it, and what we're talking about, the experimental aspect, Nick, if you want to talk about it, because it is very interesting. I don't think it has ever been done before.
It's being remade by Max Landis, John Landis' son, which neither Joe and I don't think, have ever heard of that a movie is being remade by a filmmaker's son, or offspring, in general.
Yeah, I mean, you'd have to really look at the parent-child director pairings that are even out there, which are rather small. Anyhow, I'm trying to even think of, and from a success standpoint as well, that you would even trust. Like, I'm okay with this decision.
Yeah, you know? I am too.
You know, go ahead, real quick.
No, I was gonna say no, because I'm incredibly fascinated to see what, like, I like American Werewolf in London. It's a fantastic movie. We actually just last month did the pop analysis on Sinister DreamCast for it. But I am really fascinated to see what a son reinterpreting his father's movie is going to look like. Because John Landis wrote and directed American Werewolf in London. It's not based off of any other intellectual property. It's just from John Landis' mind. So to see his son take something that his father created and redo it is really fucking interesting to me.
and John Landis wrote it, right? Completely.
Yes.
And it, like visual effects wise, it was a big deal at the time as well. It did very well.
It created the Oscar.
Yeah. So, I mean, here you have sort of the reason John Landis is, regarded as a household name to some degree, at least early on in his career. Well, this wasn't that early. Yeah, I guess it was.
Yeah, no, it was early.
Very early, right?
It was it was Animal House. Animal House put him on the map. This solidified him.
Yeah. Okay, that makes And then this sort of solidified him as like a you can't just do a writer-director thing once. You have to do it multiple times. At least twice to really get that tag. So this isn't, I don't feel like this is some sort of gimmick thing, I don't get this feeling like this is one of those things where it's like, what we could do? We could remake American Werewolf in London, and we could get Max to direct it, and then people would validate it. I feel like this is one of those things that John Landis is giving this his blessing. He's sort of giving his blessing to Max. Like, you can, if you want to do this, go ahead. It's up to you. But if you want to do it, you can have it. There is a weird thing about this, and it's exciting that it's happening. But there's a weird thing about this that Max Landis has always been about not living in his dad's shadow. He's always done very unorthodox things as a result of that. Whether it's just through the internet in general, or just even the way he chooses to go about making his sort of craft, and the way he sort of pulls up, sort of the way he kicks up dust, so to speak. He, as a character, is very different from his father. But this is very much him deliberately stepping in the shadow of his father, and not with the intention of doing it to outshine him. I don't feel like this is I don't think that's one of the that's not an aspect of the Max John Landis relationship I get. So this is a very, very this is a cognitive choice to be the son of a director and make, and he's probably going to pen it as well.
I can't see him not.
I mean, because he's a writer first anyhow in my mind. So to write and direct a remake of a movie that his father wrote and directed, it is purely experimental. He can't be looking at it in any other way. Yeah. I just don't see it as a money grab sort of thing. Oh, look at this opportunity we have here at a studio. Like, I don't see it that way. I see it as Max Landis seeing it as a purely experimental concept. Because it has never been done before.
And it's really cool too, because, a lot of times whenever they remake movies, it's like, oh, it's for a new generation. Well, it's like, it's for a new generation in the same family. Yeah. Like, it still has, like, that through line where it's like this is a family, like, it's like a family hand-me-down. It's almost like, okay, this is a little extreme, but this is the only analogy I can think of. It's like, those British aristocratic families that, like, all they do is take care of the house. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like, that, like, it's the cinematic version of that. Like, and I'm just like, I'm a big fan of Max Landis. I really like his writing style. And I'm just really excited to see what this is going to turn out. You know what I mean? Like, if this turns out well, though they've never directed or written anything before, don't be surprised if they, like, some studios come to, like, Spielberg's kids and go, like, do you want to direct? Like, it worked out really well. Do you want to try directing?
And this is not like Sofia Coppola making Godfather 4 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, this is a remake, too. This is the exact same movie. Yeah. That he's going to remake. I mean, that in itself is very different as well. Because you could kind of see somebody, like, carrying on legacy. Like, carrying on legacy. But this is different. This is retroactive legacy here. And this is a movie that, spawned an entire genre, essentially, of movies after it as well. It had a lot to do with the way horror was handled in the 80s.
Yeah. And even today.
Yeah, even today. So this movie has influence, and I don't think this movie gets made and you sit there and go, which was better? I don't think that's the point of this. It is essentially going to be made for for posterity. I don't think there's another word to describe it. It is being made for posterity and not much else. Experimental posterity.
Yeah.
For the first time ever in cinema. It's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah, you said so. We were the only other time we have is the Coppolas, because we were saying we can't think of anyone else.
That's
it's
it.
The
Yeah,
Coppolas.
that's the first one that came to my mind. I'm sure there's more. I mean, I'm sure, especially foreign directors as well. I'm not digging my brain very well this evening, but I'm sure there's more. But like I said, successfully, and at the height of success that Max is currently at, and the height of success that John reached, it's sort of like it'd be really hard to find that tandem.
Yeah, I feel like they might both be at the exact same point of their career, essentially. Like making this movie.
It's possible. Yeah. I have no idea how old John was when he made it, or how old Max is now in contrast, but
Max is like 5 weeks older than you, Joe. Oh no, probably like 8 weeks older than you.
So, I mean, I don't know how old John Landis is, though, so we would have to do the math, which we're just not going to do here. Maybe another time. But it would be very interesting if that was deliberate as well.
Yeah. Yeah, so I'm excited about that. I think that's going to be a lot of fun. I think it's going to be like the first time in a very long time where something gets remade and everyone's like, yeah, let's see what they do.
I also feel like a lot of people, especially from our generation, aren't super aware of American Werewolf in London. I don't feel like it's that sort of movie that a lot of people. Some 81 is a little bit on the high end of millennials, so a lot of Gen Xers kind of probably know this movie a lot more too. So I don't know if the sanctity of nostalgia really exists in this movie. It might just be viewed as a remake altogether, and it's just like, they're remaking another movie. But I think if people read past the second line of that headline, or if the headlines read, Son Max.
Yeah.
Because how many people know about this movie and have watched it and know that John Landis directed it, and there's a lot of elements there that I think a lot of just typical moviegoers really don't know. I've talked to many people who don't even know who Max Landis is, which is insane, and they know movies here in LA. And I'm just like, okay.
Wait, there's people in LA that don't know who Max Landis is?
Yeah. Oh, hell yeah. There's a lot of people with sticks up their asses that are unaware of that sort of thing. I mean,
I just get the impression that he's rampant around LA, like he's like the town kid, you know what I mean? Right,
that he shows up on your doorstep with a camera and forces you to be in his new documentary.
Yeah, like that's just the impression that I get of Max Landis. He's a man about town sort of thing in LA.
Yeah, he's not a big name. Status is a big deal here, and he shies away from that aspect. He doesn't particularly care about the fact, he's used his last name to get him where he is so far. There's no doubt about that has been a huge stepping stone for him, but he doesn't boast it. Right, but who wouldn't? He doesn't boast it either. So, he doesn't consider himself like Hollywood royalty or anything like that. I don't think he sees it that way. So, as long as he doesn't see himself that way, they won't see him that way. And then that'll be the end of it. And then until he makes something that makes them have to vote for him at one point, he's really a nobody in this town.
That's fair. That's fair. But it'll be fun. It'll be this is like the only remake I think I've ever heard of that I'm like actually excited about. Though there is another remake that I brought this up to Joe, that they haven't really announced, but it has an amazing cast. Which is they're remaking Murder on the Orient Express, which will be coming out next year. They actually are starting shooting it like now. And like I'm only bringing this up because this is like a fucking deep cast. Like I don't know where like the cast that they got, like their casting director's fucking amazing. So here's the cast of the remake of Murder on the Orient Express. Johnny Depp, Daisy Ridley, Michelle Pfeiffer, who what has she done recently? And I don't mean that in a shitty way. I mean that like, oh wow, she's doing something, so she must really want to do it. Penelope Cruz, Kenneth Branagh, who is starring and directing in it, Judi Dench, Michael Pena, Josh Gad. Like, that's a stacked cast.
Yeah, I mean, I hope it gets past, any sort of development hell that I hope it fully is a go. I know that they're already casted, but sometimes these things still spin out. But I mean, the original cast is pretty remarkable as well. So I think it is one of those things. This kind of falls in line with like an Ocean's 11 sort of thing.
Yeah.
Like it kind of reminds me of that when they started making those movies, which, you're kind of just like, you got to form the new Rat Pack. You know what I mean? Like that's sort of, I feel like, where they're at with this. Another really interesting thing to me is the genre of mystery in general.
Yeah, which is sorely lacking in cinema.
And I feel like it deserves a comeback, and I'd like it to. I don't know if it will. I feel like this society has to welcome it. It's one of those things that society has to really be on board with. Because if it's not, then then if we don't strive for curiosity, if we don't feel like we're a society that's striving for curiosity and answers, if we feel like we're just being given those things, which I feel like we've been in the last 20 years or so, it's because technology has moved so fast, we've had no time to wonder. I feel, and it would be really great if, like, somehow, mystery could make a comeback, and maybe it falls in the hands of television. But
I think it does most of the time.
Yeah, and it kind of does. I mean, I feel like, the procedurals of our time have really nerfed mystery and the craving for it. It's like, why would I go see a movie for 2 hours that's a mystery when you can literally watch it for 30 minutes every night on, Law and Order or whatever, like what have you. Those are all the whodunits you need, and it's really nerfed the genre. And it's disappointing, but it also has done it in a way where it's also done it in such a well-crafted way, and in such a formulaic way that if you sat down and started watching a movie for 2 hours and the whole time there was this one overhanging question, you'd be like, let's get on with it.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit more difficult now, I think, for filmmakers to make this sort of movie, and the script has to really be good, I think. And what better way to do it than to kind of bring back a classic mystery? So I think that'd be the best way to go about it anyhow, because it's kind of already built in a little bit, and you can throw the audience along the way.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's fun. You know what I mean? Like, these are the kind of movies that we're not seeing much anymore, just because of, like, the internet, and studios don't want to make the investment with a theatrical release for them. So the fact that, like, this has potentially been greenlit, if IMDb is not going to lie to us, they're supposed to be starting production in London right now. So if that actually goes through, that's really exciting. I know, like, if it gets released in theaters, I'm gonna scramble because I want to see that. I think that would be a great theatrical experience. It'll
also be interesting stylistically what they choose to do. I mean, you're talking about a movie from the 70s. The styles back then were very, very different in terms of tones and themes as they are now. And so as a result of that, what I'm saying is you could go you could scatter all those things out on the table and go, what kind of movie do we want to make here? They could go a little bit lighter if they wanted to, just to appeal to more audiences and make it more entertaining, or they could go darker and grittier with it. The spectrum is, and that's always been the scary thing about remakes, is how do you start to change the tone and the theme spectrum? In what direction do they start to lean? And are those good choices? Do they affect it greatly or minimally? And are they all good choices in the end? I mean, we won't know until it's all done. Not even they will know until it's done. But it's interesting because not until you see that first trailer will you have any idea.
Yeah.
Based on the cash, you can kind of get a gist, but it's tough.
Yeah, you got a couple good comedic actors in there that I feel like will probably bring some levity. But you got some really solid, like, seasoned actors, like Judi Dench and Kenneth Branagh. So, and I'm excited to see Daisy Ridley, not not play Rey. Not that I don't love Rey. I just want to see her do. I want to see her in another role. That's all.
Yeah.
So in relation to an episode a couple weeks ago, when we did the Matrix episode, I know I personally said I had no interest in rewatching Matrix Revolutions. I know I quoted to say that. Well, dear listeners, after talking about the Matrix, I went, I should revisit the Matrix. So I revisited the Matrix, and I'm happy to report that it still holds up. The Matrix is still a solid fucking movie. And you can't just stop there. It's like potato chips, you know? You can't just have one. So I continued to watch, and I watched Reloaded, which I was sorely disappointed in myself because my copy of Matrix Reloaded that I had at the time was full screen, which I just was angry. Just so angry at myself that I still have full screen movies. So I suffered through it, and Reloaded's not that bad. I have to say, it's terribly watchable.
I've always said this about Reloaded. It is at least at the end of the day entertaining.
Yes.
For a larger portion of it, it is still action packed.
Yeah. The highway sequence is still pretty fucking fantastic. So because of that, I was like, well, I don't remember Revolutions that well. So I went out and I bought the Matrix 3-pack on Blu-ray, which had all 3 movies in it because I refused to buy the Revolutions all by itself. And I rewatched Revolutions. And it's as bad as I remember it, everybody. Not a fantastic movie. A lot of problems with that movie. A lot of talky-talky without any kind of... Like, they introduce a lot of new concepts in the movie, and, like, there's no reason for it. The ending is incredibly unsatisfying. Like, it's a really unsatisfying ending. Like, what do you remember of Revolutions, Joe?
I don't even really... I blocked so much out of it in my head. It's funny how I actually... The thing I remember most from Revolutions is the god-awful fight scene. That's always what sticks out in my head, because it feels like it goes on for the entirety of the movie. And then I remember the very vague and symbolic ending that they just felt like they just tacked on at the end to give the whole thing meaning, but they didn't know what the fuck they were talking about anyways. That's how it felt. Yeah,
that's about right. There's something that I realized watching Revolutions, is the Wachowskis are very good at doing philosophical. They're very, very great at doing long, heady, philosophical conversations. You see that a lot in Reloaded. A lot of the conversations that Neo have with the Oracle are very long, like, heady conversations about existence and purpose. That's a big thing in Reloaded and Revolutions. It's all about purpose, and things happen because they have to happen, in destiny, and all that kind of shit. But, like, there's some moments in Revolutions that have to be sincere. They have to be very sincere, and they fail miserably. Most spoilers, the one that, like, just comes out like a sore thumb is Trinity's death scene. For those of you that don't remember, Neo has to go to the Machine City, and in the process of going to the Machine City, Trinity is impaled with a bunch of rebar, which we see during the impact. We see her get impaled with some rebar, but the Wachowskis feel it's necessary to bury the lead on this for some reason. At this point, Neo is blind because Agent Smith blinds him in the real world because he's in the other guy's body. Yeah, I know. And so Neo doesn't know that Trinity's been impaled by rebar. But we as the audience do. But the Wachowskis seem to still, like I said, try to bury the lead. And this long, what feels like 10, 15-minute scene, which is probably realistically like 3 minutes long, of like Trinity telling him how much she loves him and how happy she is to be there, and her slowly dying, just goes on, and it's this cliche dialogue, and like it plays off like a first draft, and the Wachowskis just don't know what they're doing with it. And then on top of that, we all make fun of Keanu Reeves, right? You know, he's a fun guy to, you know, punch a little bit, but like, he's not a bad actor. But in that scene, they give him, he has to react to the love of his life dying, him not being able to see it, and they take away his eyes. As an actor, they take away his eyes to be able to emote. And it just doesn't work. There are so few actors in this world who can pull off emoting without their eyes.
And, like, his eyes are... It's not even just that, like, he's not able to use it. Like, his eyes are covered in that scene, if I'm correct, right?
Yes.
Like, he's blindfolded. So,
yes.
His facial features are essentially just his mouth. Which, try to show that you care what someone's saying to you with just your mouth. Just your mouth. Just convey that to somebody. It's probably impossible. Yeah.
It's painful. Actually, at one point, while we were watching it, I just was starting to go, because you don't care at that point. Yeah. Like, these are the two main characters, and you don't care. You really don't care that Trinity's dying. You just don't. And then on top of that, you have that long-ass fight scene, which, I didn't know this, Joe, but watching the special features on it, you know the rain in that scene is supposed to be referencing the Matrix code.
Okay.
Yeah. That is what they... Yeah.
Again, more symbolism in all of this. Why couldn't they have just made an entertaining showdown? Like, what... Like, again, like, they're thinking about things that just don't actually apply. You know, that's like afterthought stuff, you know?
Well, no, it was even to the reason why they bring it up is because to get the rain to look the way they want, it had to be what they refer to as chubby rain. So it actually made it 20 times harder for the actors because the rain droplets were so thick, anytime they opened their mouth to act, their mouths would just fill with water.
Great. Amazing.
So...
I think that's like a microcosm of the entire fucking film franchise somehow, but I don't want to really put it together in my brain right now.
So, but that last fight... See, I thought the rain just existed so they could show all the times that Smith and Neo start, like, you know, their fists meet and they create the big bubble.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was the reason why they decided it had to be rain, but no. It's because it's supposed to reference the Matrix code. Which I'm like, alright, okay.
Again, that's like afterthought stuff. That's like if like a movie was great and we were sitting here and overthinking the whole thing, you know, and we were dissecting it and we were just so impressed by it, and then somebody was like, you know, the rain at the end is supposed to be the Matrix code, and it'd be like, oh, that makes so much sense, but the movie sucks, it's garbage, and shit like that just makes you go, oh, I wish they would have just fucking thought about making the movie good and not making dumb shit like that. Like, clearly their heads... It's afterthought stuff. They're thinking about whenever people talk about how great this is in the future, and then they're going to hear that and it's going to blow their mind. I hear that now and I go, you guys are idiots. You should have just made a good movie in the first place. You should have focused your energy on where it mattered. Symbolism and all that stuff, when you follow the theme of your movie, when you follow it, like, strictly follow it, and you do not stray from it, and you use that script as your Bible, and you get everyone on board to believe in the project that you're making, and everyone's on board, and everyone believes in it, and everyone understands it, and everyone gets it. They get why they're making this movie, who they're making it for. When all that stuff is clear, all that second, third, fourth, fifth layer of stuff, like symbolism and connecting dots and putting all that stuff together that fans love to do, that all happens organically. That all happens whenever you're on set sometimes and the actors are just acting, or in the post-production room sometimes when they're cutting stuff and they make connections. That stuff all happens organically. stuff that is super deliberate like that, and then you didn't actually give the rest of it thought, and you didn't get everybody on the same page with you, this is the type of shit that ends up happening. You end up with decisions like, let's make the rain big, and then, the actors can't even fucking act and say their dumb lines. With conviction, and with pride, and with emotion. You needed the raindrops to be big. Great.
Well, on top of that, there's a lot of things that happen because they have to. There's not really, one of the things that I noticed while rewatching this movie is Zion is incredibly underprotected. They make a big deal in the franchise that EMPs are their only weapon against the machines. You remember that, correct, Joe?
Yes. That's literally all they have.
Which it isn't. They have, what looks like 65 caliber bullets.
And they have mech suits.
Yeah. Which don't seem to be super effective against the machines. So, EMPs are the only weapons that they have. So, Zion has no EMP defense whatsoever. The only EMPs that the humans, actually possess are only on the ships. And there's no real defense mechanism for Zion. It got to the point where I was watching the movie and I said out loud, humans deserve to die in this world because we're so stupid. We're just, they make a big deal that, we've been fighting this war for 100 years, and it's we haven't learned a goddamn thing in that 100 years of war. And, we're so fucking stupid. And, they're not necessarily plot holes, but there are so many things that, if you think about it for more than a second, it's a hole. You know what I mean? It's a hole, and it's well, why didn't you address that? It's because it's lazy writing, and you went, well, it has to be like that.
It's not even just, it's lazy world building in general.
Yeah.
How did we get to this point in this dystopian future? And then not actually considering that maybe, EMPs as a source could somehow be explained as this very, difficult thing to obtain the energy to use it and all this, it's just world building, just figuring out history and all that stuff. Instead, you end up just having these characters that seem to just not know what's going on anyhow. And that's what worked so well in the first one, right, Nick? There was a vagueness of Zion, and only Morpheus was Morpheus the only one that had been there at that point?
No, Tank and Dozer had.
Oh, okay, yeah. So, but the rest of them, it was all folklore sort of thing, and so it made it even more exciting. I mean, I think that we should have never seen Zion, to be honest with you.
Yeah. It
should have continued to be a folklore as much as the Matrix itself within the movie.
Well, one of the ways that they try to explain it away is that, the EMPs ruin it also hurts the machinery that the humans are using. I Googled it. EMP shielding is a thing. That's an actual thing that we have nowadays. If we have EMP, because, you never get the sense in the Matrix world that we lost information. Beyond, whenever it started. No one's sure about that. But, we still have technology. There's still a lot of technology in Zion. So if we still have EMPs, it's not that hard. It is harder to believe that we don't have EMP shielding. And that we didn't develop EMP weapons.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't know. We know how much of a mess it is, and I think it has a lot to do with the fact that the Matrix, the first one, really wasn't that heady. Its concept was really complicated, right? But
yeah,
the rest of it was just, it was just delicate world building. It was information. It didn't really get that psychologically deep beyond what is real.
Yeah.
That's the question, and then we keep it there, and we just make you question that question for the whole movie. And that's pretty much it. And then the answer in the question lies in much of the third act of The Matrix, whereas the other two movies then had to sort of ante up, so to speak, the headiness of it. And instead of it just taking it up one notch, they decided to take it up 13 levels without actually developing all those levels. And, alas.
Juliana brought up a good point that Reloaded and Revolutions very much comes off like we don't really care about the story. Just look how cool this is.
Yeah. That's pretty much how it goes, which would be fine if this were just like a good old action movie, you know? Good old romp and stomp action movie, but it's not that. It never was that, and that's not, and that's it. Like Transformers, the first Transformers is a watchable movie because you just asked to see robots fighting, you know?
Yeah.
So in turn, it becomes a watchable movie, right? You know,
yeah.
The Matrix, it demands so much more from it as a movie. We don't just want to see some guys jumping around in a virtual reality. It goes so much more beyond that. So that's not all we asked for from The Matrix is, let's watch these guys jump around and shoot each other. There's no consequences, so it's fine. It makes you feel better about the blood and the gore and the mess.
Yeah, it's... And then on top of that, the ending of Revolutions is incredibly unsatisfying. I remember it being unsatisfying and having a lot of messianic imagery. But, like, Joe, do you remember how it ends?
I just remember the park bench with Oracle, but I don't remember like the ending roll credits. The sun rising.
Yeah, that's the ending is the bench. The ending of the fight is Neo kind of gives up. Agent Smith plugs into him, turns Neo into Agent Smith. Then, through Neo's body in the real world, the machines then explode all the other Agent Smiths, essentially negating that entire fight, and there not being any purpose to the fight whatsoever.
There was no point to the fight. I remember that the whole time while watching it.
Yeah. And there's no real explanation or any kind of, like, satisfying ending. Like though the machines and Neo, come down to, like, an agreement sort of thing. And then, the squids leave Zion, and then that one kid that Neo frees from Reloaded starts running around saying the war is over, the war is over. I'm like, how the fuck do you know the war is over? They just gave up. That doesn't mean that the war is over. It just means that the machines gave up this one time. It's one of those things that, like, there's a lot of things that happen at the end of that movie just because the Wachowskis, as the writers and directors, say happen. There's no motivation, and there's no explanation.
Yeah. And it really, like we've talked about, this is a franchise that could still have something going on with it right now.
Yeah.
There could be, a TV show, there could be an animated series, there could be more movies, whatever, what have you. Unfortunately, it's under a carpet that is never going to be lifted, and they're never going to dust it off. If they do, it feels like if they do, it'll be out of desperation because they don't have anything left to do. And it's like, I don't want them to do it for those reasons, you know?
Yeah.
I just think there's other minds that could take this entire concept to different heights and the different spaces. So it's an unfortunate loss, I feel.
The Wachowskis are too far up their asses to ever let anyone else deal with that world.
Yeah, I mean, it's possible one day they could just sell it off, too. You never know.
Yeah.
I mean, what else are they doing with it at this point? I mean, they're still collecting royalties from it, probably, but...
Yeah.
How much royalties are they collecting at this point, anyhow? They could be, are they making video games at all or anything?
No.
I mean...
Right. They were working on the Netflix show Sense8.
Yeah, I remember. Yeah.
But Lana just left the show over creative differences. So...
I don't know. It seems like the right thing to do would just be to sell the whole intellectual property for a ton of money with someone that would have plans to do it, to use it.
I agree. But yeah, if you were like me and haven't watched Revolutions in over 10 years because you didn't like it in theaters, it's still bad. It's just as bad as you remember it. But I'm okay. Like I said, I had the DVD copy of Matrix. I always like having a nice updated version, and my copy Reloaded was full screen. For that, on principle, I needed to get a new copy. So So it wasn't a complete loss. I don't feel like I got my money ripped off of me, but it's a follow-up.
You didn't get hosed. I'm sure buying all three of them is the same price as just buying the first one, so.
Yeah. So, Joe, I think it's time for the vote.
The vote!
Go.
Do you have a movie?
I do not at the moment, do you?
I do.
You go, Joe.
Because I don't think we've talked about this movie, and I feel like we've both seen it, and it's a very old classic. And as I've said on this podcast many a times, that I'm a big, big fan of anything that it explores the metaverse of art and using meta as a theme in works. And I can't think of a better movie to sort of introduce somebody that to in terms of early works than Federico Fellini's 8.5.
Aha.
This is a movie that he made in a sort of autobiographical way about another filmmaker that was making a sci-fi movie that had autobiographical tones in its movie, and it contains dreamscapes of the director slipping into and not dealing well with the stress of his personal life and his work life, and slipping into these sort of creative dreamscapes that are very jarring, actually, and very imaginative, and it all, when you add up all the actual reality of it all, is like really fucking interesting. And I don't know how to explain this to people, because the first time, if you do get around to watching this movie, it is subtitles. It is in Italian, and it's dubbed Italian too, because Fellini was, even though the technology existed at the time when this movie came out, he still heavily favored dubbing dialogue, because something that he really liked to do, that he was notorious for doing, was telling his actors to just say gibberish on set and then adding dialogue in later. It's just this amazing choice that no one could possibly understand nowadays, because it's not a choice that you really have to make. I mean, there's ADR, where we ADR things and add lines, but to dub things over somebody saying something, like their lips moving, and on the spot decide what they're going to say, or rework it or whatever. And also another really important thing is, a lot of times at that time, the actor that was doing the dubbing is not the actor that was acting in it. It was very common. In fact, the Claudia Cardinale, apparently this was the first movie that she ever actually did her own voice in. All other movies prior to that she performed in were dubbed by somebody else. It was somebody else's voice. And this is the first movie that she did that, but a lot of Fellini's work was dubbed, and he favored that. So it's a very interesting fact about this movie. But anyhow, if you watch this movie, it's very hard to follow the first time. I would suggest watching it more than once if you are going to watch it, because the first time I watched it in film school, I was like, I don't know what this is. In film school, you're forced to watch stuff, and I was like, what is this? And you don't trust things fully, especially when you're introduced to them by professors that you don't particularly like, their ideologies. On filmmaking, and they'll show you something, you're like, this is garbage right away. But then as I was watching, I was like, this is actually quite fucking brilliant. I'll need to watch this again. So when I got a chance to watch it again, I realized how the ending to this movie is this happy ending that he didn't want to make initially, but he ended up making it for commercial reasons. But it was a happy ending that's sort of a facetious happy ending, because he did sort of drop hints that the character commits suicide at the end. So this movie having a happy ending is sort of almost facetious in that sense, that it's a happy ending. It's almost mocking, actually, in the sense, in the idea of happy endings. It's sort of mocking it, because it can do that through the use of sort of meta themes, and using meta as its stable of driving force. And it also does dreams very well in this movie. It's kind of gives him the freedom in it. Fantastic director. If you ever get a chance to check out his other stuff, it's always a gem. Nicholas.
Yes, Joseph.
What is your movie? Did you come up with one? Did I stall
I
long
did.
enough?
No, I got it. I got one. I got a movie that feels painfully relevant right now, which is 1940's The Great Dictator. This is a fantastic movie. This is on it's on Hulu if you want to check it out. It is Charlie Chaplin's first talkie. It's also the last movie with the Tramp, because he always believed that the Tramp shouldn't talk, and this was just kind of his middle finger to everyone who told him that the Tramp should talk. So he made the Tramp talk in a movie about a not-so-subtle Hitler character. It takes place it starts in World War I, and it takes place in a fictional country that I can't remember off the top of my head at the moment. But it's Adenoid Hinkle is the dictator, and it's also tells a tandem story with a poor Jewish barber who's a World War I veteran of this made-up country that looks a lot like this the dictator. At the time of this being released, everyone called him a commie. Said he was a horrible, horrible human being. Then 2 years later, everyone renowned Charlie Chaplin as a brilliant, brilliant artist who knew what he was talking about. And how could we ever put him down? It is a fantastic movie. It's not subtle in any way whatsoever. It's very much Charlie Chaplin's view on the world and his view on government and government's relationship and obligation to the people, and what prejudice what happens with prejudice whenever shit goes unchecked, which sounds relatively familiar. Also, if you're a Mel Brooks fan, we brought this up on the podcast, but this is a good time for you to also bring it up, is Mel Brooks' Hitler is heavily influenced by Charlie Chaplin's Hitler. There will be times where you'll watch this movie and go, oh shit, Mel Brooks was just pretty much straight up stealing from Charlie Chaplin. So, but it's a fantastic movie. The fact that it's from 1940 is completely irrelevant. It's totally worth your time. So, definitely check out 1940's The Great Dictator.
I can't recommend that movie enough to people that like film comedy as much as I do. I don't know how many people are out there that like it as much as I do, but it is the best sort of instructional movie on how to do deliberate satire, where you're not just doing satire for the sake of hardy har har, point at this, look at it, it's funny sort of thing. It's there's like a message in there, and there's reason for Charlie Chaplin making this movie, and you know, when you look at a lot of the political satire of today, it's, you know, we take it for granted, I think, and how we have the freedom and the ability to do that. He went under a lot of scrutiny for this movie. This movie was a shock, and it was taboo to make such a thing. In
1940, Hitler was our friend.
Yeah. I mean, you couldn't... This just wasn't how you did things then. This isn't how you made movies, and this is certainly not how you made comedies. Comedies were meant to be full distraction. They were not supposed to actually draw from reality in any way. And that's sort of what got him in trouble, I think. And it's interesting, like I said, today we take it for granted. We have an incredible freedom of comedy nowadays to just do that all the time. But at that time, it was very difficult for him to overcome that. And it's a great movie. It's very funny.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely check it out. It's painfully relevant at the moment. So, Joe, I think that wraps up another thrilling adventure of the Insert Movie Reference Here podcast. What do you say?
I think you'd be correct.
Well, that's fantastic. I'm glad you agree, Joe. This is good that we agree. We're friends.
Every once in a while we disagree on something, and it's like years of just screaming at each other nonstop. And we've been on a pretty good run here.
Yeah. So, don't forget, other podcasts on the network: Mondays, Happiness and Warm Gun; Tuesdays, Toxic Volume; Wednesdays, Scenario Store News; Thursdays, the very podcast that your ear holes are listening to right now; and Fridays, the original flagship Sinister DreamCast. Every third Saturday, on the Scenario Store News RSS feed is Black Emporium News for the Dragon Ages. Joe, you got anything?
No.
Okay. Just checking. On that note, I think that means I'm Nick Kazina.
And I think that means I'm Joe Conniff.
See you next week. And scene.
See.
You have been listening to the Sinister Dreamcast Network. For more from Sinister Dream Productions, check out www.sinisterdream.com.